Hey, what's going on? Welcome to another edition of Sunday Night Astro Live. I'm back, Robert Phoenix. I've been trying to convert this video for the last hour, roughly, and I finally converted it, but Zoom didn't want to accept it. So I had to scrap my idea for part of the show, but the other parts of the show I can still do. So thanks for being here. And we're going to get into some astrology tonight. Of course, the topic du jour happens to be the Uranus-Mars True conjunction, which I'm going to talk about. I spent some time kind of going back through history and looking for clues with Uranus and Mars. And there are some periods where there is obviously a Uranus-Mars conjunction, because it does happen. And there was one period where there was Uranus, Mars, and the true node conjuncting together. And you know what I found? For that aspect, nothing. Like nothing significant happened on that transit. Now, that's not to say that we won't be dealing with something significant when it does roll around, because we're in a different universe. Like what was going on then, especially as it relates to technology. Well, we think we know how it relates to technology based on our understanding of technology, or the technology that we have now, and theoretically what existed at a prior point in time. The period that I'm most interested in with the Mars-Uranus conjunction, and it's not exact but close, is 1774. And the reason why I'm interested in 1774 is because Pluto's in Capricorn, and it's at 24 degrees, which is, it's not like on the button as to where Pluto will be when we do have the Uranus-Mars conjunction, but it's close. It's close enough. And so we're going to look at 1774 because that's a really important time. You know, that is a time when, you know, we are dealing with theoretically revolutionary energy. You know, that's the run up to the beginning of Pluto in Capricorn in the U.S. chart. That'll occur just 2 days before. But again, if you look at where Pluto is, and we'll go back to 1774 to try to get an understanding as to what was going on. Like things were happening. Like Pluto was already a player in the chart, and in the world as we know it. Like the world as we know it. That's a very important distinction, because the world as we know it, I think, is a bit of a slippery slope. Do I think that there were founding fathers, and do I think that there are documents? Absolutely. Absolutely. When they were around in the timeline, that's a whole other debate and question. But we're going to use what we know for now as sort of a slide rule with astrological. So we're going to go back to 1774 and take a look at that period of time. And there's this other period where there's Uranus and Mars, and I think it's in 1940, and it's really the run-up of World War II, like the Nazis, the Germans. Let's call them the Germans. The Germans and the Italians are just starting to get cooking. There's a big fallout. There's a big breach of an agreement between Neville Chamberlain and Hitler. So that's another period that's kind of interesting, because those two periods are we're kind of dealing with them simultaneously. You know, we're dealing with this thing happening in Europe, this ongoing charade with Ukraine. The latest rumor, by the way, is that Zelenko is going to be offed by the Americans, courtesy of Gonzalo Lira. So, you know, I've been following Gonzalo Lira's stuff since he became a thing. apparently he was already doing this Coach Red Pill stuff, and he was sort of the expat version of Kevin Samuels. Like, he was helping men deal with women and their crises with women. I think he's a Leo, if I'm not mistaken. So I didn't know a whole lot about him. And then I started to watch him a little bit. I'm like, okay, there's something odd about this guy. Something really odd about him. And what he was saying was from a boots on the ground perspective, and he's a very smart guy, and he's very articulate. He can connect a lot of dots. That's easy to see. But I felt like something was weird, like, just kind of a weird vibe, and running around, and I'm like, why are you doing? I mean, for me, we're going to get into astrology, so trust me here, we're going to get into it, but it's all connected. It's all connected with Uranus and Mars and what was going on in 1940 and what was going on in 1774. All those stirrings, all those rumblings, all those tremors are there. I could only really find one major kind of, again, this is going through the mainstream historical timelines that we have. I could only find during that Uranus-Mars cycle, like one major, earthquake or earth shake. So, but getting back to Lyra, he says that that Zelensky is going to get offed by the Americans, which would, and then that would be blamed on the Russians, and that would throw us into the chaos of a world war. As if we're not already kind of in one. We already kind of are in a world war. It's just not boots on the ground at this point. It's not like, we're having to deal with, Russians and Chinese parachuting, into this country, or coming up from Mexico, or coming down from Canada. I mean, it's not quite like that. We're dealing with something that's very asymmetrical. I mean, we just look at what's going on. There is a war. There's a war on carbon. That's number one, right? That's the most stated, unstated war, is the war on carbon. And if we can do the greenhouse effect and all these carbon emissions, we'll save the planet. Well, if there's a war on carbon, there's a war on carbon related issues that are associated with carbon, whether they're too many cows or too many people. Right? There's that. So that is a war, and people are in the crosshairs of that war. And it's the next invisible threat. We've gone from the mostly invisible terrorist, mostly invisible, to the invisible virus, now to the invisible carbon, which is threatening our very existence. That is a war. It's asymmetrical. There are all these other planks associated with that war, or with that aggression upon our system, and it's just not a traditional war. And so we're carbon. We are carbon-based beings, carbon-based life forms. So it's a war on us. That's what we're dealing with. We'll get to a boots on the ground, East versus West kind of thing. Maybe. I mean, if you go back and look at what happened in 1940, and you go back and look at what happened in 1774 with Uranus and Mars, it kind of adds up. It begins to add up. Anyway, we're gonna take a look at that tonight. And as an astrologer, I try to look at things a little bit differently, because everybody is saying that there's going to be doom and gloom with Uranus and Mars in the true node conjuncting. Well, there's already some doom and gloom happening. Like, how much more doom and gloom do you really need? There's a lot of doom and gloom already. I mean, are we going to talk about a crash of the system, the financial system? That's possible. That's easy. That's low hanging fruit because of what's going on with the financial system right now. Are we talking about a crash in the food supply? Taurus, Earth, all those things that are related to what we're engaged in, like the circle of life. Sure. That's on the menu, right? That's on the plate. That's on the astrological plate and menu. But again, that's like kind of, once you look at this and once you do the math and once you understand what the symbols represent, it's pretty easy to kind of go down those rabbit holes and then say, well, this is really the issue, or these are the issues. And it's true, they could be. But the thing that I keep coming back to with Uranus and Aquarius, right, the ruling planet, is that things don't always happen the way that we think that they're going to happen. It doesn't happen that way. I'll give you an example. She's probably not listening to my show, and she won't mind me using this example. But I have a friend who was a client, kind of morphed into a friend, and went through a move, right? Relocated from one place to another, and then when this person relocated to this place, their ascendant was Aquarius, and so we talked about that as part of the relocation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And was in a relationship that was not real and not honest. That is bottom line. Her relationship to the relationship was not real and honest, and the relationship was not real and honest. His relationship with the relationship and her inside of the relationship was not honest. So there was deception all the way around. Some of it was consciously deceptive, more on his part, and there was a part that was unconsciously deceptive, meaning that we tell these stories to ourselves, and we have needs inside of ourselves which are real. Like, we don't really want to be alone. We're really not meant to be alone. We're meant to be with other people. We're meant to bounce ideas off of other people or in our lives. We're meant to love and support and care for people, especially when they do the same thing back with us. That's really important. So eventually she unhooks from that relationship and she's much better. It's like you're carrying around like a dead body. You're carrying a dead body around, and then you just let go of the dead body, and then all this weight is lifted off of you, and you're like happy again. But you have to go through certain things in order to get there, which took place. And by the way, those things that took place were kind of happenstancey. Like the Deus Ex Machina, like the finding of the cell phone. You know that story? You know how many cell phones have fucked up relationships, but probably in a good way, right? The Deus Ex Machina, the ghost in the machine, the ghost in the black cube. How many times has this, right, gotten into people's let me look at his cell phone. I think I know his password. Oh shit, look at all those texts. Who is this person? Well, that's exactly what happened, right? That is exactly what happened. And guess what? That's an Aquarian thing. This is an Aquarian device. Connects us all, right? Connects us all. This is an Aquarian device. I could do my show in this if I wanted to. That's how Aquarian it is. And who was the person that was involved on the other end of this transaction? The one who had the phone? Aquarius, right? And then what was the relocation point of the ascendant? Aquarius. So here all this Aquarian energy shows up. And this person is like, well, I hated that place. I'm so glad I'm gone. I said, well, if you hadn't gone to that place, you wouldn't have been able to free yourself from this relationship. That's where the relationship freed you up. Because you took that relationship from this other place and came into this other place, and now you're free of the relationship. So what did that place really do? That's the perception of the place. Your perception of the place. Your perception was, I'm going to go there, and I'm going to. And by the way, I was doing my best to help her, and she's a great person, cool person, and I was doing my best to help her with this move. But you have to understand that's the nature of Aquarius. Like she gets out of the relationship, which she needed to do. And the place had something to do with it. Because if she doesn't go through that whole thing, if she's not dissatisfied with the place or can't connect or whatever, right? And then there's the Deus Ex Machina moment, the ghost in the machine, the Grecian reveal of the evidence, of the facts. That doesn't happen. And that's how Aquarius works. And we're seeing, I just keep seeing more and more of it. So when we look at Uranus here and we look at the role that, we're going to look at the chart too, the role it's going to play. Most people think that we're going to experience any number of, we're going to have the economic crash. We're going to have supply chain crash, distribution crash, right? We could have immune system crash. We're starting to see some of that. Like all those things are kind of percolating in the background. But what we're not talking, and all that stuff is pretty straightforward, right? Like we could talk about that tonight and we could bring it up and I wouldn't sound, too far afield with what I was saying. But the fact of the matter is that there are other things here that could also happen, and they may not be as doomy and gloomy as we think they are, right? So I want to throw that out there, and I'm going to try to explore some of that. We're going to throw the chart up, and maybe crane our necks a little bit and look at this upcoming conjunction a little bit differently. Let's try it. Let's try it out. Let's put it. We'll put it on for size and we'll see how it fits. Last week on my daily show, I started to get into this Hoover Dam stuff, and I know many of you don't watch the daily show, so I'm going to do part of my presentation for the daily show tonight on the Hoover Dam and the chart of the Hoover Dam, and why I think what's going on there is potentially very significant. So that's another component that we'll look at tonight. We got the chart of the moment, which we'll get into. And by the way, the crazy shit that happened last week, remember I said, look at like Tuesday and Wednesday. That's when Biden starts to wobble and go out of control. He started to wobble. So in the middle of the week, Biden is talking about how he was, as a kid living in Delaware, Connecticut, where the fuck it is, right? And that they had all these refineries, and it was raining, refinery juice, and that's why everybody, including him, has cancer. Like that got weird, didn't it? It got super weird, and then of course, well, guess what? Now he's got COVID. So there was a real wobble in the energy last week. It was really wonky, especially around Biden. You have to ask yourself, well, how much wonkier can it get? Well, I think it's going to get real wonky, really, really wonky. I think he's going to exit stage left. I think they're preparing Kamala Harris, and I've talked about this before. She is going to become president. For how long she's going to become president? TBD, to be determined. And I do believe that Gavin Newsom will be nominated to be her vice president. And whether or not she remains in that capacity, that's a whole other story. They could move Kamala out and bring Newsom in very quickly. And, we could be dealing with like a Gerald Ford sort of situation. I mean, we'd already be dealing with a Gerald Ford situation with Kamala. But that's the way it is, right? So I think Biden is out fairly soon. He's out. They can't continue to have him. Whoever this Robotoid or whoever this caricature is, they can't afford to have it anymore. It's gotten to this point where whether it's a game or a facade or a cruel joke or part of the humiliation ritual, it doesn't really matter. Like they can't afford to have that. They can only run that persona for so long as a program. And so I think Kamala, who's, and again, I do feel like there are factions in that world that are not on the same page. They're not on the same page. But we're going to have Harris, and she'll be the first female and also BIPOC female. We've already had the BIPOC male, theoretically, with Barry Soetoro. So we'll get Kamala. And I think probably sometime in August. I said that when the Leo sun comes in and starts to hit on Joe Biden's occulted sun in the 12th house, and even with Saturn playing a role there, especially for Kamala. She's got Saturn up in her 9th house. It's retrograding, but she's gonna have Saturn conjunct her midheaven, and I think she has Saturn conjunct her, so she's gonna go through a Saturn return. Maybe we can bring Kamala's chart up again tonight and have another swipe at it. So we're gonna look at that. We're gonna look at the chart for the Hoover Dam. We'll get into the Mars thing, the Mars Uranus piece, chart of the moment, and I was cruising around and I found, shit like this happens sometimes. I was thinking about this basketball player named Jerry Lucas, who's a very interesting character. Some of you may or may not know who he is, but Jerry Lucas is the only basketball player, to my knowledge, that has won a state championship as a high school player, a college championship as a college player, an Olympic championship as an Olympic basketball player, and a professional championship as a professional basketball player. Now, LeBron James has won 3 out of those 4. He could never do what Jerry Lucas did because Jerry Lucas went to college and LeBron James didn't. And they're both from the same state, the state of Ohio. So one of the other things that Jerry Lucas is known for is his memory. And we're going to look at his chart tonight. By the way, Jerry Lucas has Mars in, guess what? Mars in Taurus. He's got a Venus-Mars conjunction. He's got an interesting chart. And we're going to look at the position of Mercury in his chart. And I'm going to play you a clip of just how incredible this guy's memory is. He worked with a magician who's also a Taurus named, Jerry Lucas isn't a Taurus. He's an Aries. But he worked with a magician by the name of Harry Lorraine, who was a memory master. So we're going to look at his chart. It's kind of interesting. And we're going to try to decode the position of Mercury in the chart as it relates to things like accessing memory and using Mercury in a way. We did this last week when we were talking about Venus. So we can have a little bit of a discussion about Mercury tonight. And I think it'll be interesting. The only challenge I'm having is my computer, which for some reason is losing power now. And I've done like a big dive on these Apple computers, and when they start losing power when they're plugged in, it's really, really hard to reverse the process. It's almost like they make you buy a new fucking Apple, right? So that's the one thing that I have tonight, because I was trying to convert this video, and that's one of the reasons why I was late. I was ready to go if I could have uploaded it, but I couldn't upload it. So I waited for it, and then as it was converting, it was draining all this power from my computer. So we're going to try to push through this. Right now, it says that I'm charging, but it shows 17% power. And usually what happens is it gets down to about 3%. So let's try to get it going and see if we can get a show in before my computer completely shuts down. And I can get a new battery, but from what I understand, the process starts all over again. Just starts to happen with these apples, which I don't like. All right, let me see who's here tonight, and thanks for being here. And I appreciate your presence and your support. We got Kells Bells. What's going on? PB is here. There's the lovely and talented one, Dr. Joan S. We went hatchet throwing last night. You guys ever throw hatchets? You ever do that? It was cool. It was really first time I went hatchet throwing. I liked it, and not to brag, but we kind of won. But it was cool. I'd love to do it again. All right, who else we have? Solid Behind Blue Eyes in the house. Arlene Vegas here. Susie Gemini, what's happening? Namaste of Mind. I love that name. Miss Nikki's here. Stephanie S. There's my man, Thomas Jordan. Let's see. MLMCI is here. Sony's here. Hi, Sony. Jelena. What's going on, Jelena? Good to see you. Beth Cummings. Mickey King. Love it. Good to see you, Mickey. Let's see. Julie Sunshine, big cat ladies here. Southwest Florida real estate with Lewis Walden. Not many buyers, not many sellers, high prices, real estate stagflation. Well, they raised the interest rates, didn't they? They raised the prime. So, yeah, I think it's the window has passed. I think that window has passed, unless you have cashola, baby. Let's see. Thanks for the update, Lewis Walden. Luciana, what's going on, Luciana? Sky Gypsy 333, Yacht Rock took me into an ocean of memories. Sky Gypsy, I was trying to get the Yacht Rock thing together here tonight. I'm gonna have to. I had a whole video set up and everything, so we're gonna continue the Yacht Rock journey, and maybe we'll pull the yacht into the harbor next Sunday night. We're still digging I went deep yacht, man. I found so many deep yacht tracks. It's been a great exploration. And I'm a music guy, and a lot of that music, I was like, nah. But going back and listening to some of it, the production values are incredible. And there were like a lot of serious jazz dudes that got into the whole yacht rock thing, like George Duke. George Duke got into yacht rock. George Benson, of course, was a serious jazz guy, and he got into yacht. I think Lee Ritenour, Stanley Clarke even was flirting with yacht rock a little bit. It was a thing. All right, who else do we have? Let's see. World of Bliss. That's our girl Lisa. We got to give Lisa a little bit of love tonight. WC Ray, what's going on, Robin? Amanda Fox is here. Nikki Lana Hensel. Hi, Nikki. Good to see you. Michelle on Wheels. Wait, this isn't live? Yes, it is. It is live. And now, so the reason Michelle is asking is because, well, tonight was supposed to be a yacht rock extravaganza, but I couldn't get this fucking video converted and uploaded. So we're gonna have to wait on that. Little bit of wait time, but it'll happen. Astrology, hey, what's going on, Heather? Great to see you here. Hope you're doing well. Raven Rain, she's checking in. My man Steve. Let's see who else. Dave Sullivan. Hey, Dave. There we go. So let's bring this up here. We got some business to take care of at the beginning. So where are we? Let's talk a little LA Bliss. This is our girl World of Bliss, Lisa, who's in the chat, and a Chatarian. We got her through the first round. She won the first round right there, and she's currently first in their group. This is group 2. So process of elimination. This is like March Madness. And if she wins, guess what's going to happen? She's going to donate $1,000 to the event in October, which will allow me to do a little bit more, maybe bring a sponsorship in for a couple of people to attend our event, which I'm going to talk about here in a second. So you can go here, openact.com/2022/L-A-Bliss. You can grab that link. Tom just put it up in the chat. You can vote for her. If she wins, she gets to sing in the Hollywood Bowl. How about that? Chance of a lifetime. And we helped get her through the first round. Now she's in the second round. And we're going to try to support her as we keep going. And, this is where we can make a wish and help dreams come true. To help dreams come true. That is the plan. So give a little love, share a little of your time, and vote for our friend Lisa. All right, who else do we have here? LMM, what's going on, LMM? Michael Cisternino, DJ MC, Steve Letro. What's going on? Hey, there's Fran. CC Jones in the house. Let's see. Kabuki Theater. Leo Vito Vincent Radwi. I like the name too for our new country. What's going on, Leon? Chad Warren is here. Good to see you, Chad. Did I leave anybody else in that last little run there? Chataria. The Astral Table. Yes, we're at the Astral Table tonight. And here we are all elevated in the Aquarian space where we're all the center of the universe. And we're not, which is what I love. Let's see, who else do we have? Amanda, let's say the carbon thing is such a joke. They must plan on doing away with the earth and therefore themselves to get rid of us. Yeah, you know, it seems like a zero-sum game. I've been paying attention to those carbon capture units. Those things are very, very sophisticated. What are they doing? They're taking the carbon out of the atmosphere and they're putting it into the earth. Gee, I wonder why they're doing that. Maybe they got something going on underneath the surface of the earth where they need the carbon. Oh, isn't that interesting? Is that what this is all about? Is this a terraform moment for the world that's below us? Maybe. Love Light Energetics is here. Wendy Eaters here. Chaos Engagement. Gonzalo is Mundial. So I heard Gonzalo Lira is actually, this is just what I heard, okay? I can't verify or back this up, but I've heard he is Alphabet and was recruited through Dartmouth. Just saying. I feel like he's a little Tokyo Rose. He's got a little Tokyo Rose in him. Just saying. And you know what? You can get information. There was this, who was it we were talking about? Oh, Russell Brand. Russell Brand. So I was on this message board, who's a Gemini, by the way. Says we're going to bring this back to astrology. If you ever watched, if you ever get a chance, watch the interview with Russell Brand and Jordan Peterson. If you want to see two Geminis just like spin around each other, and you ask yourself, what the fuck are they talking about? Right? It's like that is a great interview if you want to see two Geminis just like surfing on Quicksilver. And you know that it's like you hear it, you go, wow, that was really great. What the fuck did they talk about? Because they're just spinning all these ideas around, right? It's like centrifugal force. So Russell Brand showed up on this chat and threw something up. Wow, Russell Brand, man, he's really laying down laying the wood on the New World Order and World Economic Forum, and all these people are starting to chime in. It's like, well, have you checked out his past? And he was part of the Olympics in London. It was a big fucking ritual, and he's playing a Willy Wonka role. And it's like the other side of Russell Brand, right? But if you watch Russell Brand, you'll probably get some information. You'll probably learn a few things. He's got like a little hug fest going on with Yuval Harari. I mean, Russell Brand's a typical Gemini. You're going to get like, hey, that's interesting. Hey, what the fuck's going on here? Right? Not all Geminis are like that. Ask Susie, but maybe some are. I think Gonzalo Lira is kind of in that camp. Like, you'll learn things from Gonzalo. No, I'm not saying you won't. I'm just saying, take it with, a little grain of salt. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. The time when he got kidnapped and everything was a little weird. And the other thing about Gonzalo Lira, and I'll move on, is that if he was really, really invested in protecting his family, he says he's married. He probably is married. He's probably have kids. Why the fuck are you putting your family at risk by doing the shit you're doing? Because what would happen if they took you out? Because you were being, politically disruptive. Well, your family wouldn't have you. That was the big question I would always ask. Why are you doing? Why aren't you protecting your family? Is this your? I don't know. I'm going to get off the Lira thing. I don't want to sound like I'm, pissing in the punch bowl. But I just think grain of salt. And he could be right. He could be right. And would they really kill Zelensky, or would they just take him out, and remove him? They could do that too. I mean, the guy ultimately is an impediment. Because he knows what's going on. He's been, he's really been like Waldo. He's like, where's Waldo? He shows up everywhere. See, my power's dying on my fucking computer. I'm behind on this. This is going to be brutal. Usually stops at about 3%. All right, let's see if I can keep going here. Russell Gill checking in. Carol Askew is here, tough as nails. I'm in a Mars perfection year, so I'm a bit worried about it, I guess. Yeah, I guess, right? Like, what's the worst thing that could happen? Well, the worst thing that could happen is, you know, maybe you would die. Maybe you would die. Anybody, not you, but maybe you would die. I think the harder thing is like what you do after you die. If here's where I think we're at. If you have somehow done your best to avoid getting the carjack, I think that's the worst thing that could happen right now. I'm watching people who are dealing with the adverse effects of the carjack. And I saw a video today that broke my fucking heart. This woman had to take her daughter to emergency. And this is not the first time it's happened. She's spasming up. They pump her with beta blockers. What is it? Ativan. They pump her with Ativan. They try to relax her muscles. Like, it's really difficult to watch. Really, really difficult. And a lot of these cases now are starting to pop up more and more frequently. And I think that's an issue. So I think if you've avoided, it's like we're in this big game now. And if you've avoided that, right, you're able to kind of move on to sort of the next level, or the next roll of the die where you're still on the game board, right? So if you have your health, you're good. You're good. And then as far as Mars goes, I think you just have to, if you're in a Mars perfection, you just have to be vigilant. You have to have situational awareness, whether you're driving in a car or in a place that is not, in your best interest. Man, I am really going low on the juice here. This is not good. Let's see. Harry Bowie is here. Good to see you. The Mars Uranus North Node conjunction 18 degrees on my sun in the 12th house, going with the flow. You got no other choice, right? I mean, you could have a revelation. You could have a startling revelation. Absolute startling revelation. Okay, I want to go through more and greet you in chat, but I'm concerned about the power drain here. I'm down to 2%, and this thing might be put to sleep. So let me try to get as much in as possible. I really apologize for that. Let's look at the since we're talking about Mars Uranus, let's try to get it in here. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to close this window and hopefully save some energy here. Let me shut down the Brave browser. Okay, let's see if I can save a little juice here. All right. Okay, thanks for bearing with me. And I hope that we can, continue our live stream here. Because at some point, the computer will be put to sleep. All right, let's look at it since we're jamming. There it is. This is what we were talking about. This is what Amanda was mentioning. Mars 18, True Node 18, Uranus 18. What's the Sabian symbol for that? Now I'm going to open Brave back up again. So let's look at Taurus 18, Taurus 19. Let's see if we can get a read on that. Here, let's close these. Let's close this. And close this. And close this. Damn. All right, here we go. All right, so let's look at 18 and 19 Taurus in the Sabian symbols, because I think that'll give us some interesting insight into the upcoming energy that we're dealing with, which on the surface seems rather harsh, doesn't it? So these are interesting symbols. Let's start with 18, and then we'll go 19. Let's do this. There we go. Taurus 18, a woman airing an old bag through the open window of her room. The cleansing of ego consciousness. So this is the interpretation of the Sabian symbols, which were put together by Mark Edmund Jones and Elsie Wheeler. And then Dane Rudyard, a number of years later, brought his interpretations into the mix. So this is how Rudyard interprets 18. This symbol, which was brought into this cyclic phase over a weekend at Balboa Park in the 1930s. This is like late 1920s, actually. And it's a double blind. So Mark Edmund Jones had these, 3x5 cards, and they had the various degrees of the zodiac, but they were not in order. And he did not know what the degree was or what the symbol was, right? So when she would kind of bring it in, he'd write it down. So this is a woman airing an old bag through the open window of her room, the cleansing of the ego consciousness. In this third stage of the present sequence, the first two stages should be considered background. So he gets into these different cyclic phases. I actually did a webinar on this. I should make that available to people. It's a pretty good webinar, actually. In this third stage of the present sequence, the first two stages should be considered background. The traditional teachings concerning every man's nature are somehow reconciled with the youthful enthusiasm that he sees in every problem of growth, an issue between the good and the bad. The symbol suggests that the real enemy is within the mind. It is the ego and its attachment to possessions. And we know that Taurus is connected to possessions, the things that we own. So this is an airing out of those things. This is the old bag. She wants to use this bag again. And by airing it out in the window of her room, she gets the dust and the mold and the mildew, whatever, and the bag becomes useful again. So there's this circulation of air, which is consciousness and light, right? And it's the reusing of something that has since lost its usefulness. She's finding new use. She's literally animating it. So this is what happens here. The mind is shown in the likeness of a bag, now empty and needing to be aired in the sunlight, but the window must first be opened and the bag emptied. The phrase cleansing the doors of perception has become well known of late, but even more to be cleansed is a container of perceptual images, the ego mind. The key word is purification. Okay, so if we look at this, and the key word, part of this stellium will include the true node in the stellium, has to do with some level of purification. And it's a weird dance that we're going through right now, because on the one hand, we've developed, I think, an unhealthy relationship with possessions and material possessions and the material world. And on the other hand, we have a very small and select group of people who are going to tell us that we're going to eat bugs and that we're not going to own anything and we're going to love it, right? So there are these two extremes here. One extreme, comes out of conspicuous consumption and do you need all that shit? And right. And then the other extreme is people telling you what you can and cannot own. So somewhere in here, we need to renew our relationship with material things, and in a way where we don't have to have, this oppressive third party tell us what we can or cannot use, right? Right. I mean, I think that's a really big part of it, But on the other hand, what is enough or what isn't enough for us? I think, what we don't need is we don't need these global Karens basically saying, well, we can have these things, but you can't. Right. That's part of it. The second part here is 18 moves to 19. When you look at the symbols or the degrees for the symbols, and everything at 18 is moving to 19. So 19 is really something I'm interested in and that I really want to, spend a little bit more time on. And that's a new continent rising out of the ocean. Well, that makes perfect sense here with Mars, Uranus, and the true node. And one of the things that I think has been really interesting to watch, but also inherent in some of this now, is this whole discussion of timelines and Tartaria and hidden history and what's going on in this continent and other continents where they have these buildings that are just almost impossible to explain. And I think this could be symbolic, and that the idea of Tartaria or the idea of timelines or the idea of these civilizations that have been here before us begin to rise out of the ocean of our consciousness. That's number one. But then from just a geophysical standpoint, like something could happen, something in terms of an earth change, something tectonic can take place. And all of a sudden, something is revealed. It's like, oh, wow, look at that. That wasn't there before. And now we see that thing. I'll read this. The surge of potential, the surge of new potentiality after the crisis. Okay, so keep that in mind, right? So we're dealing with this Uranian, Mars. And when we look at the true node, that is lunar energy. The nodes are lunar. The true node, the south node, that's lunar energy. So we've got the moon, Mars, and Uranus. Uranian energy, Martian energy or martial energy, and lunar energy. And the moon is memory. It's our memory. When we think back and we look back in our lives, that's a lunar moment. We're looking back. It's Cancerian. Cancer looks backwards. Water absorbs memory, water absorbs emotion, and the biggest memories we have are the ones that we have emotions connected to with them. The surge of new potentiality after the crisis. The symbol hardly need be commented upon. Well, I guess I should stop. When the mind has been emptied, he's using the mind again here, and light has been called upon to purify the consciousness, freed from its attachment and contaminations. A new release of life can emerge out of the infinite ocean of potentiality, the virgin space. What will it be used for? Because this is a fourth stage symbol, we find in it a suggestion of how to approach whatever new phase of life has been not only hoped for, but actually confirmed. The technique is simply to allow the infinite potential to operate in unconstrained spontaneity. This means to have reached a state in which the conscious, rational ego is no longer a controlling factor. Okay, so this is happening at a couple different levels. Number one, it's happening on a physical level, right? That's what the symbol constitutes. Something has happened, something tectonic, something volcanic is now rising out of the ocean, right? The ocean here represents our collective consciousness. And the new continent is potentially a new realm of understanding because the continent would stand under us, right? That's how this symbol works. So it could be an actual physical thing. We could have something absolutely tectonic happen during this crisis. And it could also be a crisis where we approach the thing with a new level of awareness. The key word here is spontaneity. So let's talk about the approach, right? Let's talk about the approach to this, because the approach is almost as important as the actual thing itself. 1830, 1834, 1842. So we know that Uranus is already going to 19. And then the true node is already going to 19. And one day later, Mars goes to 1831. It's going to 19. So we're just going to look at this from the 19th degree in that Sabian symbol. The idea is for whatever happens to not have a fixed response. You want to have a spontaneous response for whatever is going to go down starting post August 1. You do not want to be fixed. You do not want to have your feet in cement blocks. So how do you do that? You do that by not freezing up. You do that by not going like this. Oh shit, here it comes, right? Which is a lot of the doom and gloom that you'll read in or hear about astrologically. It's like, oh shit, look what's happening. Look what's coming. You know, something interesting can come out of it if your number one, your belief system around this isn't fixed. So I could sit here and tell you, oh shit, you know, look what's going on in crypto, and you know, Elon Musk, you know, who has Venus and Taurus, which I think he does. Elon Musk sold, you know, all of his Tesla stock just before his whole thing with Twitter fell through. What does he know? You know, look what's going on with Celsius and the guy that's running Celsius, and you know, he's trying to get over to Israel and you know try to dodge the collapse of the crypto market. Yeah, I mean, we could go down that path, or we could go chapter and verse, and we could lay out everything that's happening in the world right now, which, by the way, would not be too dissimilar from aligning with this energy. But is that going to help you? Are you going to brace for impact? Right? Or are you going to look at this and say, all right, there's another way of interacting with this. There's another way of dealing with this. Remember, this is Uranian energy. And on the surface, what looks like something that's a potential loss could also very much be a potential gain. Just wrap your head around that. Try not to get attached to the outcomes here over the course of the next couple of weeks, because we're going to, you know, Mars moves, you know, fairly slow. And, you know, we start on the 1st. This is the 1st of August, which is my father's birthday, by the way. 1st of August right there, 2022. So, you know, Mars will, what is Mars like? 3 days a degree, roughly, right? So by the 4th, it's at 19. By the 7th, it's at 20. You know, so we're looking at roughly the 1st through like the 12th until Mars begins to separate. And that's a pretty big period of time because shit can happen really quickly now. Like a week in our world or 12 days in our world, it's like, you know, that could be half a year, really. And especially with these planets and the acceleration, because that's what I'm seeing here. I'm seeing acceleration. Like this is a quantum point or a quantum moment that we're dealing with. Like we're, you know, like A to H or A to I. There's this potential coming up here. That's not to say that there's some real challenge, you know, dealing with the Saturn square. And even with Mercury here at 25 Aries, or what is it, 25 Leo? Sorry, Leo. That could be challenging, right? The square to Mercury is it breaks down your perception. Mercury in Leo is ego. There's a lot of ego associated with unrefined Leo. You know, said unrefined. Refined Leo, it's heart. Unrefined Leo is ego. And so there are people here with this square, like going on, like, well, fuck, this is how this is supposed to work. And they can get really stuck in that, really fixed. We're dealing with fixed energy here and a fixed T-square. So this is breaking up our perceptual patterns of how things theoretically are supposed to work, right? If you're able to let go, there's a greater chance that your ability to expand your ideas are part of the process, right? We see the trine with Jupiter. Mercury is it's more of a trine with Chiron. The sun is in trine with Jupiter, but it's in trine with Chiron, right? And that trine with Chiron and Jupiter with the conjunction with Chiron, gives you the ability to see things from a different perspective, right? So during this time, and I'm not here to sugarcoat it or, wrap this up in Pollyanna, but what looks like or can perceive to be loss might not be loss at all. Just try to wrap your head around that, okay? Don't get stuck. I think that's the key here, is to not get stuck in, number one, any kind of preconceived ideas about what this thing is going to be like. That's number one. You don't want to create the movie in your head. You don't want to create a self-fulfilling prophecy. That is so important. So important. And when you're dealing with Uranian energy, it's very spontaneous. You want to be able to pivot, right, on a dime with the energy. We're dealing with Saturn here too. And Saturn in Aquarius, Saturn going retrograde, going backwards, in breaking up those Saturnian forms. So we tend to think, like, if we look at our lives through hierarchical relationships, we tend to think that the quote unquote elite, right, that they're near the top of the pyramid, and that theoretically they're immune to whatever happens to the rest of us. That's not true. That is not true. And so when these things happen, whether or not, like, these astrological alignments happen, whether or not you think that they're going to, push the accelerator here based on the astrology, which, by the way, could be true. They could be going, hey, look at this. We've got this Mars true node Uranus conjunction coming up, and it's squaring Saturn, and it's squaring Leo, and we're going to make life a living hell for them. We're going to break the economy. We're going to unleash a plague. We're going to bring on world hunger during this time because the heavens deem it so. Right? I mean, that could be the case. We've seen it. They push it. They push the energy. Look at 9/11. Like, there's plenty of symbolism, plenty of astrological and astrotheological symbolism with 9/11. We can even get into that with the Hoover Dam. Like that, that could be part of it, but they're not immune. They're not immune from any of this. They may have a wider margin, but look, for instance, we're watching, what's her name? Nicole Kidman and Angelina Jolie basically doing cooking classes on eating fucking bugs and worms, right? They have to do that. They have to do that. They are being instructed to do that. They're being told to do that. And they may say, well, when the rest of the plebes eat the bugs and the worms, don't worry, you'll get it. You'll get a nice grass-fed steak. But you got to do this right now. You got to sell. Do you think they're immune to it? No, they're not immune to it. What about Brad Pitt? He's walking around on the runway wearing a fucking dress that looked like a gunny sack. You think he's immune to these things? No, he's being told, you got to go wear this. Go wear this. Right? Go emasculate yourself in front. So these people are not immune to whatever these changes are. And those are kind of extreme examples. Those are ones that, that we see, or at least I see. But there are others that we don't see, and they're in the mix here too. I think this is what I think is going to happen. Partially, I think some of this COVID stuff is going to get blown wide open, because I feel like, and I can just feel it, right? I think you can too. We're starting to reach kind of a critical mass here with what's happened with the carjack. More and more people are starting to, like, there's a tipping point. And I think we're getting very close to a tipping point. When the tipping point happens, that there's distractions. Like, they're just ready for another distraction, whatever that is. But I feel like this is part of it. And if you go back and look at that Sabian symbol for 18, Taurus, which is the woman who's airing out the bag, right, in the sunlight, in the air, those are all natural. Those are all natural elements that theoretically deal with some kind of purification and the airing out. And of course, Rudyard's talking about the ego there. To me, that also has something to do with looking at what took place. And we're looking at it, we're airing it out from a new, like I read where there were 3 physicians who dropped dead on consecutive days who worked at a particular clinic. Oh, gee, how do you explain that? Right. So we're getting really close to a critical mass piece here. And, is it going to be good? Is it going to be positive? Or is it going to break down some of these structures that we've been having to deal with? Like even Mercury and Leo at 25 degrees or 25, 29. It's like, I know this to be true, right? It's that sense, right? That sense that Leo here is infallible. And I believe Mercury's in its detriment, if I'm not mistaken. So we have this trine going on with Chiron. Hey, look at it from a different perspective. Oh, wow. People are dropping like flies. People are sick. We have this guy who's supposedly our president, and he got all of his, his jibby jabs, and now he's got the vid. Oh, what's going on here? And then you throw in, the whole thing with Burks, in which he was talking about recently. Is Burks a Leo too? I forget what her sign is. Scarf lady, right? I feel like that's coming. I feel like that momentum, that dam, we're going to talk about Hoover Dam, that dam is going to burst. That dam. By the way, I think last week I did talk about Hoover Dam. I was talking about Hoover Dam on last week's show. I was talking about what would happen if the dam burst, and then they would have, and I have my geography mixed up. Henderson and Las Vegas are on the other side of the Hoover Dam. And I thought they were down. No, I was wrong about that. Hoover City, I think, is down from the Hoover Dam. And then what happened on Monday? There was an explosion at the Hoover Dam. I was like, oh shit, we were just talking about the dam. So I think there's some of this, right? And to me, Mercury and Leo here is science, right? It's like, this is the science. This is the hard science. And, and it's like, no, it's not. No, it's not. It is not the hard science. It is something very different. And then we have this sextile to Chiron. It's like people are hurt. People are wounded. People are fucking hurting, okay? They're hurting. I saw this young woman who had eczema. You guys have seen the video. It's gone viral. Now her eczema is out of fucking control. Gee, I wonder why. She talks about it on the video. She tries to give it some space. She tries to air the bag out into the sunlight. But by the end of the video, the poor young woman she's an athlete, right? She had a kind of an ongoing thing with eczema. She had a little tiny patch on her arm that she managed to control it to just that, right? And then ever since she went through the protocols, it's out of fucking control. Her face is covered with it. And by the end of the video, she's in tears. She's in tears. And she talks about how she could, she tried to eat some crispy rice cauliflower, and it sent her into a paroxysm of eczema. And she's frustrated and tired. That's just one video. One video. These things now are starting to mount, right? This is the tectonic pressure that's going on. And to me, that Mercury and Leo, that's science. I was like, man, science, this is how it's done. No, it's not. It is not how it's done. And what the decan, it's in the Aries decan. It's like there's a rude awakening coming. And we even have look at the degree here of this yod, Neptune and Pluto. Well, my. We got a yod with Neptune and Pluto on the day that Mars, the true node, and Uranus all go into Taurus. Neptune, it's like the back end right there, especially in Pisces, deception, deception, deception. What is Pluto? Pluto is DEAF, death, right here. Boom. And then we got the T square going on. So something big is going to go down with this whole science shit. That's how I'm seeing this, right? And if that is true, and there are any number of, really super powerful programs, and they have this stuff, right? They can go through and all this data, they can accumulate all this data, right? All this data, they can see what's going on. They can see the videos, the viral effect of the videos. They can collate all this stuff, these supercomputers, and they can mash all those metrics together. And it's like, okay, these are the next steps on the script, because this thing is going to happen and the dam is going to break. The other thing with this is that Mercury is conjunct Trump's ascendant. This is Trump is what, 28? I think he's got Mars at 28 and Mars at 27, ascendant at 28, Leo. So Mercury is conjunct Trump's Mars in Leo and his ascendant in Leo. So, these planets are going to start to square his ascendant and his Mars. He also has Pluto at an earlier degree in the 12th house in Leo. So it's almost like these planets, Mars, Uranus, true node, hit a midpoint between Pluto and his ascendant. So I definitely think there's some Trump action also in the air. Right. There's some Trump stuff going on in the air during that time, based on Mercury and where it is in terms of his chart. So that's a whole other thing, right? They're trying to ramp this, theoretically they're getting closer and closer. Steve Bannon just was found guilty of this bizarre show trial, right? So they're getting closer and closer, theoretically, to Trump with this whole January 6th thing. Now, are they going to, continue to push forward on it and try to, do something that's going to be more dramatic than we've seen thus far? Potentially, I could see it, right? So that's another factor. It's another vector with this stuff. But I really feel like it's this Pluto Neptune Yod in conjunct, and then this Mercury and Leo, where it's like the mighty fall, right? The people who, stubbornly, I'm the expert, I'm the fucking expert. And then here comes this stellium coming in, and it's just blowing it up. It's blowing it up. The best thing that you or I or anybody could do in a situation like that is fucking humble yourself. Right here, right? The sextile to Chiron. Don't be afraid to say you were wrong, because that's where the benefit is. So if somebody can actually say I was wrong at a high level, like that potentially heals whatever it is we're going to go through. On a personal level, if you can do it, say I was wrong, that's your best out here, right? Because whatever is going on, the deconstruction of form and ego is part of this process. And the out is that sextile, that trine to Chiron. I was wrong. I admit it. I was wrong. It's liberating. It is a liberating thing to do. That's where the healing comes into place. We've got a sun trine Jupiter at that time too. That's an interesting, and at 8 and 9 degrees. So this is a period where if you have heart, right, and some courage, even, and Jupiter retrograde is interesting. It's like, can you retreat back and find something in yourself that allows you to move forward? This is finding, maybe it's your raison d'etre or like your why. Okay, like why? What do I need to do? What kind of spiritually generated force can I get back in touch with, so I can keep moving forward. You know, and that's the other piece here. You know, again, during the summer, this is a snapshot of the sky. So the sun is conjunct Ceres, and that's nurturing. Sun's in a square with Mars. You know, Mars is separating from the sun, but it's still a 9-degree square. You know, so the ego during this time, starting like the first day of August, which is a big day, like the mighty shall fall. You know, anything that's false will fall, because this is the unhealthy attachment to ego. And here comes Mars, and here comes the true node, and here comes Uranus, right? It's going to blow that shit up. And what's the out? The out is admitting you were wrong in figuring out how you can actually, based on this chart, which is really, New York, at 12 noon, right? How can you help some people? How can you help? Especially if there's a full-blown crisis. That's the other thing here too. If there's a full-blown crisis, springing into action. And sometimes squares aren't so bad. Squares can be really motivating. A Mars Sun square can be really motivating. It can, if you've been feeling like you don't have much fight in you, Mars Sun squares can, light a fire under your ass and get you a bit riled up, right? So this is a very interesting transit. Very, very interesting transit. And even like that during that day, that day when the stuff really starts to kick in, we've got Moon in Virgo, which tends to be critical, also engaged in conjunct with Saturn. But we have a grand trine that day. Moon, Pluto, and Mars. They're in a grand trine. So, Pluto in Capricorn, so this is all about Earth and being practical. So what's practical? What makes sense? How can you respond to this situation? Starting from, you could even back it off to the last day of July, which what's that, 31st, because the moon will still be in Virgo and approaching Mars, right? So yeah, this is interesting. I think the energy is interesting. To try not to hold on. I mean, I feel like if you, fight for whatever you need to fight for, but don't get engaged in a fight for your ego during this time. You'll lose. You'll lose. If you're trying to hold on to this egoic, like Mercury, and even the opposition with Saturn with Mercury, it's like, I mean, you can see, just go back in time. Go back in time when Saturn went into Aquarius. It was right at the beginning of COVID, and everybody was locked down, right? Saturn and Aquarius, hard science, hard data. I've talked about it before. Tony Fauci, Capricorn, ruled by Saturn. He's the conductor, and he's waving the wand, right? And so we have this Mercury in opposition to Saturn, and it's really set for a fall. It is set for a fall, and it's coming. The energy is, I think, really disruptive. So everybody who's invested in the narrative up to this point, the narrative becomes very shaky, very, very shaky. It's like a Tower of Babel moment. That's what it feels like. It's like a Tower of Babel moment, and Mars and the true node and Uranus are disruptive. And you go back to the Sabian symbol. And the Sabian symbol is the new continent that arises, out of this tectonic moment. This thing comes out of the sea, and it becomes this new ground for our consciousness. It's like, oh, fucking let the truth come out here. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid of this. I'm just going to be straight up. Don't be afraid of it. Be able to move, be able to be spontaneous. The art, and we've lived in such a fixed time in a lot of ways, but there are many people that have, been very good at being mutable, changing, adapting on the fly. One of my buddies, Mark, who lives up in British Columbia. I've had him on my Friday show. And he and I had been kind of living these parallel tracks in some ways. And he knew, like, he got ready because his if you've watched my Friday show, he's a very talented illustrator and cartoonist. He does these caricatures, but he doesn't make people feel bad about, caricatures can make you feel like, oh, wow, that's a really unpleasant side of me. Well, there's a purpose to that. Caricatures over accentuate something about the individual. He does it in a way that is funny, lighthearted, and enlightening. And I would go to his website right now, but I've got so little power. I'll leave a link in the description of the show so you can go to his website. And his story was that he would go to these conventions and he would do these live. He'd figured out how to do these. He did a show with Danny Katz recently, by the way, too. Anyway, he could do these things live at a convention. And somebody would sit in front of him. He'd ask them questions. And within a few minutes of asking them questions, he'd read them. He'd read their energy. And he had this really fucking cool, like, illustration and caricature of that person that was revealing, but revealing in a way where they felt better about it afterwards. So anyway, he knew that the convention world was going to get shut down. And so what did he do? He regrouped. And he said, I'm going to start to do this online. And he got his, he took a crash course at OBS, set up his studio, and started doing everything remotely so he could stay in the game. And I've seen him evolve through this process, right? So people have been doing it. People have been engaged in that mutability of the true node in Gemini, which was happening during COVID. Now we have the true node in Taurus, which has been more fixed than anything. The housing market has slowed down. Our friend Lewis from Florida has, told us about the market, right? Things slow down in Taurus, but we're headed to a place here where things speed up rapidly, very rapidly. So don't be afraid to pivot, be nimble, be spontaneous. Try not to get caught in the maelstrom of what's going on around you. This is very important. And I've talked about this with eclipses. I've talked about this with other energies. What you don't want is you don't want to be naive, okay? You don't want to be naive, but you also don't want to, order up, 3 portions of doom on your menu before the thing has even started. And there are things that are happening here. Structures are going to fall. They're going to start to fall during this period, whatever they are, right? And only resilient and reliant structures are going to be able to make it through. I used to, I've talked about him before, Phil Fisher. Somebody should do a documentary on Phil. Phil was a brilliant, brilliant inventor, Aries. He was just way ahead of his time. And one of the things Phil got into for these maglev trains that he was working on in his head and real life models was using bamboo for like the trestles. Like when one of his maglev trains would go over the trestles would have been made out of bamboo. Why? Well, bamboo is resilient and it can be flexible during a seismic moment, right? So if there was an earthquake, say California, and these trestles are in bamboo, his maglev trains can deal with it, right? That's what you have to be like, during these times. You have to be strong and resilient, right? Strong, resilient, but flexible. Strong, resilient, but flexible. And bamboo comes right out of the earth. It's a real nice, Taurus kind of metaphor. So try not to be stressed out, right? Just do your best not to, brace hard for impact. That's the worst thing that could happen. Worst thing, what can you do now, right? Like if a comet or meteor is going to hit the earth, which is another interesting metaphor for this, it's coming, right? So you've got 7 days, 8 days. Like how much more can you prepare in 8 days for what might be something that is inevitable? Whether it's the economic crash, whether it is, the food crash, maybe Biden and, whoever's, playing strings, go into full on, climate change crash and climate crisis and executive orders. Like you're just going to have to be able to adapt. And then I'm not saying agree or assent or consent, right? You're going to have to be able to adapt. You may have, 8 days to get, top off your preps and make sure you got fresh water and all the things that you're going to top off your gas. I mean, all that stuff could be very real here. And that's one of the things that I would clearly recommend. But you've got 8 days. Like, are you going to be able to, and what happens after that happens after that. And then you're just going to need to pivot and be, not be attached to the egoic outcome. Let other people be attached to the egoic outcomes. Let other people's Tower of Babel structures crumble. And even if you have said all along, I was fucking right? I was right. And you witnessed that. What's the best move? Mercury Chiron trine. Like, okay, I'm not going to lord it over you. You're hurting. You were adamant about the things that you thought were important. And so you did them. And now you're in a world of hurt. Now you're seeing it. Now it's out in the open. We're going to be dealing with that. Like, this is destructive energy. But remember, go back to the Sabian symbols. Something comes out of it. Something new. Some new understanding comes out of it. And this is why now I try to wait a little bit. I try to wait a little. It's like, okay, well, we can see these things. Or somebody says something, but I don't really want to attach to it so fast now, because I think that is problematic. It's better to wait a little bit and to see like how things are going to go down. Somebody made a prediction a few months ago, or I forget what it was. I'm like, okay, well, let's see what happens. Didn't happen. Like all these really dire things. And then there are times when you're not paying attention and something dire does happen. But we've been so conditioned to live in fear and wait for the other shoe to drop. Well, the other shoe's been dropping right and left since, January of 2020, right? Those shoes have been dropping right and left. And if you've been paying attention, you've been adaptable, you've been able to stay in the game. And that is what you have to do. You got to stay in the game. Bottom line, stay in the game. You stay in the game, you increase your chances of having a positive outcome here. Trust me. And it's not just survival oriented. There's things that you can do just on a personal level that you can make other people's lives better. You commit to something like that. I feel like this is the energy that we have to be invested in. This is the real Aquarian energy. We see ourselves as part of, the same family, the same tribe as much as we can. Although I got into it with this woman on Twitter the other day. It was weird. It was a really weird thing. It was like, we're not always living in the same world. We just really are. I'll talk about it more on my show tomorrow. I don't want to talk about it right now because it's funny and it's part of a different flow. Right. But I feel like the people that are receptive, and that person was not receptive, by the way. They weren't receptive. And when they're not receptive, then you know what you do? You cut your losses and you move on. You move on. And if you stay open for a little while and you want to see where it goes, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But at some point, you have to make a choice. The choice is, do I really want to be invested in having a conversation with somebody who ultimately their solution to the world and what we're going through is a fucking cul-de-sac? No, I have no interest in that. None whatsoever. And I would assume that maybe most of you don't either. So in ending about this Mars Uranus true node, conjunction, right? And ending about it. It is going to be energy that is going to break up and shatter form. And these are some of these things are things that we might be used to and take for granted. And some of these things are, I'm not even say might, they're going to be things that people who have had egoic anchors, like this is how it is, this is the way it is, do these things, and just why? Well, because we're telling you to do these things. Don't question it. These are the people that I think that are going to have the hardest time with this upcoming transit, because their worldview, their world order is dearly at stake. Dearly. All right. I hope that's helpful, because I'm trying to look at this from a different perspective. I'm trying to give you another way of dealing with it that's not so anchored in the fixed realm of, well, this is how the shit's going to go down, and you're just going to have to deal with it, and get ready, embrace your impact. And there could be some of that. We know. You don't have to be a fucking world-class astrologer to read the tea leaves of what's going on in the world if you've been paying any attention, right? And all those things could be rapidly accelerated with this Mars-Uranus conjunction and the true node. Absolutely 100%. But there's another side to that. And I started with Uranus, and I'm going to end with Uranus. That when things are activated with Uranus, there are unforeseen circumstances and unintended consequences that take place. It's the way it is. It's the way it is. And that's where we are right now. We live in a world and a universe that has a big boomerang effect. So don't stress out. Don't freak out. Do the best you can and be spontaneous. Be ready to pivot if you need to, right? I mean, there's only so much you can do at this point. Like, the one thing that we can't do is we can't control the world. We can't. And even with astrology, and look, there are some things with astrology that are interesting, like having your solar return in a place where your solar return can look really good. I've had people pay me for that. People will say, hey, can you find a place on the planet where my solar return looks really good? I've been paid for that. I've gone through locations. And obviously there are people that have the money to do that, right? Sure, why not? You want to maximize your potential. There's nothing wrong with that. But what astrology does not do, it does not keep you from having to deal with the vagaries of this so-called reality that we're in, right? You may be able to get through a phase or a patch or whatever where other people may be hurting or blistering, right? But there may be another phase or patch where a bunch of other people and you're caught in the undertow, the trough of that, and so there's a lot going on here. And astrology can be very, very helpful in terms of how we deal with our lives, right? I wouldn't do it if I didn't see it, if I didn't understand it, if I didn't witness it with clients and what happens in their lives. I'm not tooting my horn here, and I'm not 100% right, but I can't tell you how many times people have come back to me after readings and said, you absolutely nailed it during this time. So there's a there. I'm not telling you this to toot my own horn. I wouldn't do it if I didn't see that there was a there, and there is a there. And there is a, really profound piece around this, but you can't use it to, ultimately put a shield and a cover around you and protect you from whatever's going to happen. There are things that are going to happen, and you're going to need to be able to deal with it. That's just the way it is. And sometimes you have really intense transits in your life. They happen, and sometimes those transits can be drawn out. And I know they're really frustrating and they can be really painful. And yet you evolve and you move through it, and then you get to the other side of it, and you learn whatever you're supposed to learn. And the outer planets give us insight into how we're supposed to do it. With Neptune, you let go. It can be really hard, but you let go. With Pluto, you go through the fire and you face it and you don't make any deals. With Uranus, you deal with the chaos and you deal with, some of the deconstructive elements, and you can be a little creative with it, right? With Saturn, you've got to, bear down and be an adult and be mature and, put your nose to the grindstone and get shit done. There are ways that you can get through. And there's always moments of relief, like, they're Venus transits, they're Jupiter transits. And so you're not always going to be stuck in a web of, lousy transits. Like, it's not going to happen. And the other thing too is astrology. And I tell this all the time. Astrology is a system. It's a system. Its systems are finite. And we here, right, at times are finite. Like, there are things that I could do in my 20s that I can't do in my 60s. There are things in my 60s I couldn't do in my 20s. Like, I couldn't have this conversation with you in my 20s. Number one, the internet wasn't around. That's a finite system that wasn't around. I mean, it's a system that wasn't around then, but I didn't have some of the experience that I had in my 20s. But I also couldn't go out and fucking hit a mountain now and do like a 11, 12 mile hike and, not blink and get up the next day and probably, a little bit of stretching, go out and do it again. Right. So we on some level are finite, but we're also, infinite. We're infinite. And the infinite part of us extends beyond the systems. Just remember that, right? It's really important. Really, really important. Don't get caught up in the Sturm und Drang of what we go through, because we're all going to go through it to some degree or another. It is how you get through it that's important. That's the key. It's how you get through it. If you get through it with dignity and character, and let's say go back to, the square with Mercury and Uranus and Mars, and if you say, "Hey, look, I was wrong. I apologize. I went down the wrong path, or I told you the wrong thing," or if you go down that path, you got the sextile, the Chiron, mental healing, your heart opens, heart connects with the head. People like, good on you. I appreciate that. People will always appreciate an honest and heartfelt apology. They will always do, always. Only the most cruel and specious, cretins won't. What people won't appreciate is a half-assed apology, right? They won't appreciate that. So it's how you go through these things. That's what matters. And even when you have good transits, like you're just killing it with the transits, you can wind up being an asshole. And you can just like, hey, my shit doesn't stink. I'm on top of the world. Hey, look at me. No, it doesn't work that way. When the wind is at your sails, be thankful, be grateful. And when there is no wind at your sails, be thankful, be grateful, because you'll learn something. It's how you get through that moment or these moments. And we're all going to go through it. We're all going to go through it. We're all going to be tested. We're all going to have these, these character moments. They're coming. And one of the great things is that if we're going through character moments together, guess what? We can help each other. We can assist with one another. And that is going to be our saving grace as we go through these character moments together. And somebody might be vulnerable and you can say, here, here's my hand. Let me pull you up. Or I could be vulnerable. Somebody could say, here's my hand, and pull me up, right? Those are character building moments. And when you say you're vulnerable, really vulnerable, and not some fake ass vulnerable, but really vulnerable, like, man, this is really hard. I'm having a difficult time, and people will be, responsive to that. So I feel like what we're dealing with here at a higher level with these transits that are coming are the breaking down of these egoic structures. And that goes up the pyramid to these, these cretins that have to follow whatever orders that they're following, right? Because they're all following orders they're all order followers at some level. Even people that you think that are really high in the food chain. They're fucking George Soros follows orders. Trust me. So does what's his name? Klaus Schwab. So does Bill Gates. Bill Gates follows orders. Right. And there are people above them. So ultimately they're taking orders from, one source. Right. And all of them will have to, at some point, they will all tumble down the mountain. All of them. All of them. Because those people, those entities, those so-called elites, their position is based on their egoic structure and the things that they did in order to get there. They sacrificed their humanity in order to get there. And they'll have to deal with it at some point. And it may be sooner rather than later. It may be on the onslaught of, what's coming with this triple conjunction. Just keep in mind, Uranus flips things. It totally flips things. So what happens if all of a sudden, Biden declares a climate emergency, or whoever, it could be Harris, whoever? What happens? What do you do with that? Right? Well, you better know who's around you. You better figure out, how you're going to, pull some shit together, right? It will cause people to think outside the box. It'll cause people to improvise, be spontaneous, to have a new level of understanding. And it probably wouldn't have happened unless those things happened, right? It's the way these things work. Okay, I'll give you a story. I'll give you a little story. A little quick story. He's probably watching. Johnny Cruz told me this story where he's helping a friend of ours move, and he took her car into some problems with the steering. He took her car into town, and he drove it into town, got some food, and by the time he got it back to the hotel, the power steering broke on it. It was the power steering belt broke on the car. Right. And what would happen if she'd been driving that car, doing this thing that they're doing together? It could have been a real problem, but it didn't happen because he took that car and he drove it until ultimately it broke. And then what happened? They slapped a new belt on there and they're on their way. Right. So this is what I'm talking about, right? Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. We're going to have to get through this thing anyway. At some point, right? At some point, we are going to have to rise up and deal with the situation as mature stewards of the universe, of the real God, right? The real God, not the fake God, the real God, the God that's in the real universe, right? So it's our time. And I know it's tough, right? I know it's tough. And guess what? Nothing might happen. I mean, maybe nothing happens on a big level. Maybe it's business as usual and you go through some shit in your life and we move on. That's the other side of this thing. But with all the fixed planets, I don't think that's the case. We're going to see something. We're going to experience something. Just don't get stuck. Don't get your feet caught in the mud. And you get caught in the mud by being afraid. Okay. And by the way, it is not hard to be afraid. There's a lot of shit going on in the world right now. I don't think we've ever felt more uneasy as a people, as a country, as a planet, unless you're, kind of rooting, the forces of destruction on for whatever purpose or end. And, some of that may be actually to some degree okay. Like there's some things about our system that just need to go, right? But if you're just, rooting everything to be destroyed, that's a whole other moment, a whole other thing. Okay, let's talk about really quickly. We got an event coming up here. I need to talk about it because it's an important event. It's the Harvest Moon event here in the Hill Country with myself and David Palmer, the Leo King, and some other surprises along the way. It's a 3-day event, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and it's October. Let me show you the page on my website. David is in recovery mode, by the way. We texted a little bit yesterday. And this is going to be in October. So this is from the 14th through the 17th. There he is, the man, David Palmer, a.k.a. the Leo King. He's going to be presenting, talking. He's also going to be pumping out some electronic beats, which is going to be super cool. I'm going to be there. The Chatarians are going to be there. And it's, not far from the Guadalupe River, which is a beautiful river. And this is really what it looks like this time of year in Texas in October. Bunch of Libra energy in the air at that time. There's a night visage of the hotel, Olympic-sized pool. They got another hot tub pool. They got another pool that overlooks the Guadalupe River. You got catered meals here. You got snacks. It's going to be really cool. The price for 3 days, meals included, snacks, the space, David, the events. I got some other events planned. They're going to be super cool. 7-11 until August 15th. After August 15th, it goes up. That's to motivate you. That's called a motivation factor. And then after September 15th, and if you so decide to cancel, you can. It's going to cost you $100, but after September 15th, you can't. You're in. And we got a limit of 70 people. So I hope as many people can make it as possible. The whole idea that David and I talked about was that this would be an event where you would be juiced and energized. And the whole idea is that this is an Aquarian moment, right? This is an Aquarian moment for that weekend. And you're going to connect because we got Sun in Libra, Moon in Gemini, Mercury in Libra, Venus in Libra, Mars in Gemini. It hasn't gone retrograde yet. Pluto will have gone direct. You got those other planets in retrograde motion, but a lot of air and a lot of connectivity, a lot of information. It'll go by fast, but it'll be super electric and super fun. And with Libra, peaceful, right? Balance. That's where, we're looking for some balance here. So this is the 4th year I've done it, and every year it's been a super success. And I hope we can see you there and enjoy one another's company and try to have a temporary autonomous zone where we get to experience a lot of these Aquarian energies, because that's what happens. I mean, for me, that's what it's like. It's like for 3 days, we get to be a tribe, we get to experience some magic, and then, we take it, we go out into the world and do our thing. Okay. Looks like my computer settled in here at 2%. So I may be a little fractally, I don't know, I'm not really watching it. But why don't we look at this Hoover Dam stuff? Because I think it's pretty interesting. And I talked about it on, was it Wednesday and Thursday on my show. So we know that there was an explosion at Hoover Dam, Lake Mead, which, is connected to the Colorado River and Hoover Dam. Like, it's historically low. And if they wanted to, of course, we're going to get into the they now, the people who decide on kind of an astro-theological level, right, to manage the planet and to create a planetary ritual, if they wanted to blow that dam, they could. They could blow the dam. And I'm going to show you that there is actually predictive programming around that. It happens what? It happens via an earthquake. Okay. Now, remember, we got some tectonic energy coming up. We are talking about the Hoover Dam a little bit here. So I'm going to play you some of that, and hopefully I don't get banged on YouTube for it. It's a clip from the movie San Andreas, which came out in 2020. Stars Paul Giamatti, stars Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, And I'm going to play a little bit of that and try to get into some of the high strange and the symbolism of the Hoover Dam, and also the chart that's related to the Hoover Dam, which is very unusual. All right. So why don't I do this? Let me show you an image of the Hoover Dam. It's really a trippy image. Okay, so here we go. Right? What does this look like? Like, what does this freaking look like? It looks like these are two legs right here, two legs. And then it's like a body, right? Here are the arms. You've got, this looks like a service road here. And I think this is the highway that connects it. I think that's right there. This is part, so you have an arm here, an appendage here, an appendage here, two appendages here. Here's the chest. This is, by the way, this is feminine. This is not masculine. Feminine. Here's the dam waters. This used to be the Boulder Dam now, and then they named it after Herbert Hoover, the Hoover Dam. And so the symbol of the bursting of the dam is the bursting of the birth waters, right? It's like the water breaks. And the whole idea from an esoteric standpoint is that if this is connected to like the birth of the Aquarian age, because this is really what this would symbolize, the birth of the Aquarian age, that the dam waters would break, they'd burst open, and it would symbolize the new aeon. And we just had a transformer explode last week. So this is what got me to think about it, look around. There's a lot of esoteric and occult breakdowns of the Hoover Dam, but they did not connect in, at least the ones that I saw, did not connect in with the movie San Andreas. So which I'm going to show you in a minute here. So the Hoover Dam, a lot of people died during the creation of the Hoover Dam. A lot of people died. And I think Wikipedia has a number here. Let me see if I can do the number for Hoover Dam. Okay. So I've seen the number running from 112 to more than 112. I've heard a couple hundred people. I've heard up to 400 people. So it's hard to get a real number. There are people who are supposedly buried inside the Hoover Dam. And let me show you some here. They have these 6 companies, and the whole 6 companies were basically, the whole idea of a corporation starts during the New Deal, and so these 6 companies come together and they form this corporation. And you have Bechtel and you have Kaiser, and it's like, it's the Western Industrial Mafia. Let me see if I can, the deaths. So some sources I've read 112. This piece says 114. It stands 60 stories tall. So you have the number 6 built in there. You have the 6 companies that built the Hoover Dam. So now you have 2 6s. 726.4 feet. That's the height. So looks like right around 114 deaths, roughly. Could be some more. One of the deaths is very strange, And it gets into, again, some of this kind of occult and esoteric symbolism of the Hoover Dam, because you're dealing with like duality, which always plays a big role in astrotheology and this, basic occult magic, right? So I'm going to show you something here. This is like another part of the high strange of the Hoover Dam. There was a father and a son who died working on the Hoover Dam. It was the Tierneys, and I've talked about this. It is so bizarre. So bizarre. A father and a son. I'll show you the article. So this is from the Las Vegas Review. This is from 2016. And notice December 18. It's 2 days before the commemoration of the deaths of this father and son. So Tuesday marks a somber date in Sharon Tierney's family history, and she plans to observe it the way she usually does each year around December 20th. That's the day. That's right around the time of the winter solstice. The Nevada City, California woman delivers fresh flowers to the grave of her beloved great-grandmother. Then she spends the rest of the day remembering two men she never knew who died to make the desert bloom. So the story is that on December 20th, 1921, so we have 12, 20, 21. Interesting, huh? A crew surveying locations for the dam got caught in a flash flood, and a man named John Gregory Tierney was lost forever in the raging Colorado River, one of the first casualties of the project. Then on December 20th, 1935, 14 years later, that's half a Saturn cycle, by the way, to the day, the job site suffered its latest fatal accident when a worker fell to his death from one of the two intake towers on the Arizona side of the Black Canyon. That man was Patrick William Tierney, J.G. Tierney's only son. So this father and son, so remember, this is twin energy, right? This is Gemini energy. Gemini energy. The father and the son, they die on the same day, December 20th, 14 years apart. So this is part of the high strange of the Hoover Dam. Like there's a lot of really bizarre and strange shit that is connected to the Hoover Dam, including an axial clock that aligns with Thuban, which used to be the pole star of our so-called universe, right? Polaris replaced Thuban. And there is an actual astronomical clock that shows when this is all built into it by this guy. I think his name is Oscar Anderson, if I'm not mistaken. He's also the guy who created these two angels, which is really bizarre. I'll show you that. Who watch over the Hoover Dam. There are two of them. And they're sitting on these black cubes, right? These black Saturnian cubes. And in fact, in order to bring them in, they actually brought them in on these large blocks of ice, so as not to like scar up this black, polished black, I guess it's what, marble, black marble. So there are two of them. And of course, you have the father and the son who die, right? They die as part of this whole thing, and it's part of this dualistic energy, right? So these winged guardians who are like the watchers of the Hoover Dam are consecrated there. Theoretically watching over the dam. Let me show you this other symbol. If I go over here. So it's all in one area. This will give you some ideas, the scope of these statues. So here's one of the watchers. Here's another one of the watchers. They're the winged guardians, right? They're very Art Deco looking, but they're sitting right on top of these black Saturnian hypercubes. And then embedded in the whole thing is a very, Freemasonic compass in a square. It's like incredibly esoteric and occult. And I'll try and show you as well what that looks like. But here, you can also see there's like another sculpture back here, which I'm going to show you. And that's this sculpture. Can you see that? They died to make the desert bloom. That's the exact phraseology that was used in that piece. Dying to make the desert bloom. So you have the Father and the Son. The Father and the Son. Now, did they randomly say, okay, these guys are going to die on this day? Or is that part of the high strange of the simulation? What's interesting about this is you can see, right? You can see this figure emerging out of the waters. And it's almost as if the dam itself has broken. You can see them emerging out of the waters. You can even see a little bit of the compass in the square here. Like, here comes the compass and his arms are like the square. So you have this central figure emerging out of the, it's out of the waters. Not beneath the water, right? Not beneath the water. The water isn't up here, right? This symbol is emerging out of the water. So it has this connotation of birth and rebirth to some degree. And that's part of it. Let me show you see if I can find the circle and the compass and the square. It's like totally obvious when you see it. All right. Hold on. So this is the axial clock. And they have all of these images around the Hoover Dam that are related to like Native American traditions. Here's one where they have Alcyone, which is generally thought of as the center of the universe, right? This is all mapped out. Oscar J. Hansen, like he's the guy that does all this stuff. And it's all part of this axial clock or this axial timeline. You can see here, right? This is where the axial clock is, and he aligns the moment, like right there. That is the alignment with Thuban, which used to be the pole star, which has now moved on to Polaris, right? And Thuban is in the it's in the constellation of Draconis, right? So we're talking about essentially, dragon people, right? Reptilians, Alpha Draconis. That's right where this thing is aligned to. And then you can see here where they have the compass in the square. It's pretty visible, right? Here's the compass coming down. Here's the square coming right out of the eagle's wings. So this is Hoover Dam is incredibly esoteric. And you can even see, like, this is part of the axial clock. The Earth spins at 23.5 degrees, theoretically, right, to the plane of the orbit around the sun. The North and the South poles take nearly 20. So this is the the cosmic year. This is what's being mapped out here. And when they laid this down, right, this was where Thuban was with this clock. Pretty interesting stuff, right? I mean, so there's something going on here with Hoover Dam in a big way. All right. So let me show you the video, if I can pull it up. And this is where the predictive programming comes in. So we're dealing with Pisces and we're dealing with Aquarius. This might just throw my computer into full tilt, but let's see what happens. And I've got some sound here. All right. So this is at the beginning of the movie. I'm only going to play a certain part of it.
Shit.
So they're testing for earthquake patterns.
Pulse rates are spiking again. They're huge.
Are you serious? Tim?
I'm about to have a major quake.
It jumped to a 7.1! Jesus, Kim, get the hell out of there!
Here we go.
Everybody get off the dam! Everybody off! Hurry up! Stand behind the barriers! Stay behind the barriers! Damn! Hurry!
Come here. I got you.
Oh my god! Please! Oh my god! Damn! Hurry up!
Okay. This is an important part right there. Right there. Okay. So you're going to witness the destruction of the Hoover Dam. This is more than likely predictive programming. Right? This is they're kind of laying this thing out. Now look at this symbol. This is a spike through the soul. What is the soul? The soul is Pisces. Pisces. And what does he do? He sacrifices himself for who? A child. So there's sacrifice involved here, which is very Piscean. But what kind of a child? A girl. He sacrifices himself so he can save the life of a girl. And what are we about to witness with the Hoover Dam? That the dam is about to burst and that it is symbolically going to give birth to the Aquarian age. This is the end of the Piscean age. He can't go any further. The Piscean age is over, right? And it's through that last moment of sacrificing himself for the child, a girl, feminine, water, that symbolically sets the stages for what's about to come in the movie. So I'm going to just play it out here so you can watch it blow up.
No!
Close your eyes.
There it goes, right? Symbolic breaking of the waters. Piscean age is over. and the destruction, creative destruction, when the Aquarian age has begun. All right, so I'm gonna stop that. I saw 2%. So what happens in that movie is Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. I think he's a firefighter or something like that, and he's on the rocks with his wife, another feminine persona, and he has to save a bunch of fucking people. He's like the new Bruce Willis. So he saves all these people, you know, mostly his wife and his daughter, whose name is Blake, who is the creator of a cosmology where there are these demiurges, right? It's a whole Gnostic cosmology. And this film is kind of in some ways, kind of it's not like The Matrix, where the world is, a simulation, which is really what Gnosticism is about, like the fallen world, right? Like this is not the real world. Whereas Christians would say this is the real world, and that we somehow defend or we anchor our faith through God and make the world more real, right? Through our relationship with God. Anyway, I don't want to get caught in the weeds there. But so he saves his wife, he saves theoretically his kid, but they have this moment where they're supposed to meet at Coit Tower in San Francisco. And I have a little piece here from the movie where he's looking at their life in Coit Tower, or it's like a place that they've gone to before. So this is a meeting point for the family. Like if anything goes wrong, they're going to go meet at Coit Tower. Like let's meet at Coit Tower. And so he's got to get from Southern California to Coit Tower because I think his daughter is in San Francisco. So by the time they get to Coit Tower, it is on fire. So what do we know about Coit Tower? Right? It is masculine. It is like the masculine principle. And what do we know about the Hoover Dam? It's the feminine principle. And the Hoover Dam is destroyed by these tectonic waves, but it's water. And when he goes to Coit Tower, the masculine principle is on fire. So it's like this alchemy between fire and water, the masculine and the feminine. So it's in this movie, right? So this movie has these alchemical images embedded in it, and the predictive programming of the sacrifice of the Korean guy, which is Piscean, and it's the end of the Piscean age. It's like the last great act of the Piscean. So what happens to California? Obviously, it's El Destructo. And something new comes out of it. Like there's this new potential that comes out of it. That's the whole idea behind the movie. So the old age is destroyed. The old age being all the structures and the lives that wind up getting just demolished during this movie. But then it's done, and then something new emerges out of it, and you see this whole kind of Aquarian sort of vibe begin to rise through people trying to help each other and all this other stuff, right? And I'm not necessarily saying that that's part of the intent of the movie, that last part, but it's in there and it is part of it. So this whole thing with the Hoover Dam, I think, is really interesting. I mean, just based on like the esoteric meaning behind the Hoover Dam. And then you see the father and the son that die, right? 14 years apart, basically half a Saturn cycle on the same fucking day, 20th December, which is the winter solstice. It's just crazy, really crazy. And then you look at some of the other stuff associated with it, and then how it's really pointed towards Thuban, which is in the constellation Alpha Draconis, and you have those two watchers that are sitting there like looking over. Then you have the Masonic stuff, right? Like the architects of the world, that are putting all this together. So I'm going to bring up the chart here for Hoover Dam. I think it's really interesting. And we just witnessed the end of the Georgia Guidestones, which in and of it, I got to look at like the connection between the Hoover Dam and the Guidestones, which I have not done yet. So supposedly the Hoover Dam, this is what they laid their first transformer, what was it? September 11th, 1920, something like that. So September 11th plays a role in the Hoover. And I think I've been trying to find like a really significant agreement is reached in March of what is it, 1919? Let me see if I can find this. The Hoover Dam. Now I've heard that agreement was reached on 3/22, which is when the Georgia Guidestones were erected. Let me just see this. So it was constructed between 31 and 36, but they had a bunch of stuff that they were laying down before then. Like they started to look at the land in the 1900s. They're trying to figure out what they were going to do with this thing. Let me just get the date on that. So it says it was built in 1933, but the commission date, 1936 to 1960. But they started way before that. So you could go back to 1906, 1907. They were doing stuff out in that area. Let's see. Let me just get an anchor year. Yeah, so here it says, with little guidance on water allocation from the Supreme Court, proponents of the dam feared endless litigation. Delphi Carpenter, the Colorado attorney, proposed that the 7 states which fell within the rivers basin, California, Nevada, Arizona, Utah, New Mexico, Colorado, and Wyoming, form an interstate compact with the approval of Congress. Such compacts were authorized by Article 1 of the United States Constitution. In 1922, representatives of the 7 states met with then Secretary of Commerce Herbert Hoover. So as far back as 1922, they're kind of, on the planning side of this thing. And then on December 21st, that's an interesting day. That's right around the winter solstice, right? 1928, President Coolidge signed the bill authorizing the dam. So this thing gets the presidential signature in 1928. And it says right here, the Boulder Canyon Project Act appropriated $165 million for the project, along with the downstream Imperial Dam and All-American Canal, a replacement for Beatty's Canal entirely on the U.S. side of the border. It also permitted the compact to go into effect when at least 6 of the 7 states approved it. This occurred on March 6, 1929, with Utah's ratification. So there's a March date right there. But I had read somewhere that 3/22 was a pretty significant date. So we can go back all the way from Coolidge in 28 to the actual like consecration of the dam. And I'll show you that chart. So this is the day, this is the time, 8:56 p.m. Very specific time, by the way. This is the time that they, broke a champagne bottle over the Hoover Dam. Said, okay, it's open for business, right? They're commemorating the Hoover Dam on September 30th, 1935 at 8:56 p.m. So what do you notice right at the beginning, right? The midheaven is Aquarius at 25 degrees. That is the water bearer, right? And then we have Saturn in Pisces, Vesta in Pisces, both retrograde. What are they doing? Squaring Mars. What is Mars doing? Squaring Neptune. Big T square there, right? Big Mars in this T square, I'm sorry, it's destructive. It is destructive. And the Mars-Saturn square, right? It's that hard energy. And what do we have here? We have Pisces. And then we have Saturn at 4, Uranus at 4, and then the Yod right down into that sun, right? You just see everything like dumping from the top of the chart down into the sun. And if we threw Saturn in here, which we will, it's right there. By the way, I think that's close to the same degree as Kamala Harris's midheaven. Where do we see Gemini? Remember the Gemini symbolism? Right here, Chiron. And when I put Polaris in, Polaris is at 26, I believe 23 Gemini. Chiron right there, right on the freaking ascendant, right? Boom. So we have the two fathers, well, the father and the son that dies. We have the two guardians, so we can see the duality. It's right there. Polaris, 23, more duality. But more importantly, what do we got? We got this Aquarian midheaven. And guess what? Here, Saturn's going to come back there again. It's going to hit that midheaven. And when Saturn hits Saturn again, so this would be the third Saturn return for the Hoover Dam. 3 is a big number, right? Comes in, squares Mars, and then we get into the beginning of that opposition with Neptune down here in the 4th house. Look at that, Neptune in the 4th house. Watery. Wow. To me, this is like a wow chart. If I were looking at this from a symbolic level with Aquarius like pouring down upon the rest of the chart, this would be the chart. This would definitely be the chart. So, whether something is going to happen to this dam, whether it's when Saturn hits the midheaven or when it hits the third Saturn return, which would be next year and then into 2023, something's going to happen here. And I think this dam is ultimately wired for its occult and ritualistic end game. And what happens if Lake Mead continues to drain out and to not have any water? Like, what's going to happen to the dam? Will the dam be impacted by that? I mean, so if they're not churning water through there with those turbines, what's going to happen? Or will they say, okay, well, we're screwed here. Lake Mead is done, so we're gonna blow the dam. Could that happen? And would it be part of some kind of esoteric or occult ritual to bring in like their idea of what the Aquarian age would be to end the Piscean age? It's all in that movie. I mean, you can see it in that. You can see it. It's right at the beginning of that fucking movie. And he can't move, right? He's his soul, literally his soul is pinned to the underpinning, the construction of the dam. It's going to take him down. Anyway, a little bit of interesting astrological workout with the movie Hoover Dam, or the Hoover Dam in general. All right. So I think we launched at around 7, and my computer stayed at 2% power. We made it through the show. I'm going to wait on Jerry Lucas next week. I promise I'll try to get here as close as I can to 6. And then we'll be in that energy, we'll be in that Mars Uranus energy. It's going to be interesting for sure. Don't freak out though. And hopefully we'll be able to, I'll be able to upload my video too next week, because I wasn't able to do it tonight. It's all part of it. It's all part of the plan, supposedly. All right. Thanks for being here. Appreciate you. Appreciate your time. If you're interested in a reading, you can go to my website, robertphoenix.com. If you get a reading, there are instructions there on how to contact me. You can call me if you're out of the country. I communicate with people via telegraph or signal, and we can set it up. It's worked out pretty well that way. So it's easier for me if you just reach out either via phone or through those mediums, and I get back to you like right away. It circumnavigates email, which has become a bit of a problem. All right. Thank you one and all. Have a great week. And we'll see you on 15 Minutes of Flame tomorrow over my channel at 9:11 a.m. Central Standard Time. And we'll be back here next week. Oh, by the way, on this channel, watch the interview with Mark Malone that I did on Friday. It's a great interview and has a lot of real positive and I would say optimistic energy during a time of darkness. So if you wanted a little bit of inspiration and see how somebody's life has changed and they found their purpose, go watch that interview. It's right here on this channel. All right. Use your head in order to discern what's real, your heart to stay what's possible. Thank you to the mods, Tom, Ryan, Steve, Maury. You're invaluable. Thanks for being here. Love you all. We'll see you back here on this channel for astrology next week. On this channel on Friday, Russ Winter comes in and gives us some takes from his